Let's start by taking a look at the tools and materials that we're going to be needing to create this beautiful Cosmos stem. So this is based off the Double Click Bicolour Violet variety. So it's got just these beautiful clustered petals in the center, and then just sort of opens out, and it's all this incredible, obviously the two-toned petals, and got these really beautiful detailed leaves, and the back of the flower also very detailed and just very, very pretty. So let's take a look at what we're going to be needing to create our stem. Starting with the papers. For the petals, I'm using white doublet and going to be using markers. We'll deal with that in a moment, just to add a bit of color to the edges of the petals. So this here is just the doublet. It's not laminated, it's just as is, and it holds up really, really beautifully. For the sepals, so there's two layers of sepals. This inner layer, I have used some of this 90 gram in color 354. It's a very pale pink. It doesn't matter what color you use. You can use a very pale green, you could use a white. And then what I did is I just cut a little piece off of this, and I used some yellow chalk to stain it like that. So some has come out very, very subtle. You can see there, just a nice bit of variety. There's another piece. So I just used the chalk to rub up onto the paper. And then what I used was some wood glue, just to give it a nice bit of a sheen and to seal in that chalk. So I'm using that for the innermost sepals. And then for the outer sepals, I'm just using a piece of laminated ferns and moss doublet. Again, you can substitute these papers for anything that you like or have on hand. So there's just a little piece of the laminated. I'm using the ferns side to be showing, and that's the petals and the sepals sorted. Then for these leaves, so I wanted to try something different, and just sort of taking very complex looking leaves and sort of simplifying it. So what I've done is I've used some 200 GSM watercolor paper. This was an A3 size, and what I did was I just cut a strip off the top here. That was the height of my tallest leaves, and that strip was enough to give me that whole leaf set. So it was enough to give me this whole leaf stem, which is awesome. It's a great way to utilize paper in a less wasteful way. So there's two options. With mine, what I did was I created the leaves, so they were white, and then I used some of my Rust-Oleum Satin Eden to just spray them afterwards, and it really gave this beautiful sheen to the leaves, and I think they turned out really, really well. So I was very happy. Very simplified method, and they hold up very nicely. So there was that option for coloration of using the spray paint. Alternatively, I've got these ones here. So this one here, these leaves, I have used creating a strip that I had painted with some acrylic ink, and this is in colors sap green and olive green, and I literally just painted the strip front and back and used that to create my leaf. So anything that you want to do to create your or paint your leaves up is going to be great. I just found the spray painting to be so much simpler than going in and laminating crepe paper, for example, because this paper is quite stiff, so you can see the leaves hold up really well, whereas with the crepe paper you're going to have to laminate it just to get it to be stiff enough to hold its shape. So that's what I've used for the leaves, some watercolor paper. For the stems of the leaves, so these little wires here, they're about a 30 to 33 gauge. You can see a super thin wire. It doesn't need to be a thick wire. we want a bit of movement on these branches, so a thin wire is perfect for this job. And because the watercolor paper is quite firm, it's going to hold up really well. It's not really relying on the strength of the wire. So that's what I'm using for the leaves. And then for the main stem, I'm using a 40, I'll cut this down to 40 centimeter, 18 gauge wire. So that's the wires being used. In terms of the coloration for the petals, I'm using 91% rubbing alcohol, and I'm using 2 markers in vivid purple and vivid reddish purple, and that's going to give me this beautiful coloration. So with my experiments, you can see on this one as well, just a slightly different sort of look to it, but all the same color markers being used in a different way, but they all just yield a very beautiful natural look. So that's what I'm going to be using to achieve coloration. It can be quite easy to go a little bit overboard with the marker, so I have got in this little container, I've got some bleach on hand so that I can just sort of touch. So like on this one, for example, it was a very dense center, and so what I did was I took a cotton bud or a Q-tip, and I just sort of tapped some of these petals just to lighten it. So that's an option. If any of your petals have come out too dark, you can always go in with some bleach and lighten it up and achieve a much more realistic coloration. And in order to utilize these items, the markers, I have got this. I've just taken a piece of plastic, so I had some paper that arrived in it, and I've just wrapped a piece of cardboard, and so I'm using that as my base, because the way that we're going to be coloring the petals is going to be, you're going to be needing this non-porous surface to color your doublet on, and I'll be showing you that technique. But anything, you know, a piece of cling film, anything you've got like that that's obviously non-porous will be perfect for this project. Even if I wrapped my board here in some cling film, that would have been perfect, but I had this and I thought I will use this for the coloration. And I've got a little container here too to mix my rubbing alcohol in. So that's in terms of the coloration, and obviously the alcohol inks if you're using that method for your leaves. You're going to need a hot glue gun. I've got my wire cutters, and I've got a pair of scalloped pinking shears we're going to be using for the detailed edges of our petals. I've got some much more detailed scissors for finer cutting, and then obviously my Kai scissors for all the other cutting that I need to do. I've got 2 paint brushes here, a wider brush and a narrow brush. That's just going to help bleed this color on the ends and add a color to our paper. And then I've also got some Aleene's tacky glue we're going to be using, and I have got a ruler. And another thing that you will need is for the center of the flower. It's hard to see it, and they're all tucked in with all those petals, but the center is going to be created with a strip of the white doublet, and the edging is going to be done with this yellow floral tape. And the reason I'm using the floral tape is because this is the perfect color, and it works so well for the center. And if you've got some yellow crepe paper, that's perfect to use as well. If you're using a 90 gram, I would fully outstretch it before applying it to the center the way that I'm doing it here. Otherwise, you can use a 90 gram as well. Any yellows that you have, this just is really a lovely yellow without having to do any additional coloration to it. It works perfectly. I've also got a black permanent marker for details on our center. And I think that is about everything. The really amazing, and also with the stem wrap, I'm using the doublet, the green doublet for the stem wrap, just to keep everything consistent from the sepal pieces all the way down. And it blends so well with the leaves. The leaves have come out slightly lighter than this doublet, but it just works so well. But the really great thing about the way that we're going to be making this flower is that everything is freehand cut, and it's something that I use all the time in my practice. I find that it gives a much more natural and realistic look to a flower, and if it's something that you can learn to do, it's going to just greatly improve your work. And so this flower is all made freehand cut, and I think the result is really beautiful, but also it's a much more organic and natural process. So that's all the tools and materials that I've used. Feel free to supplement anything here for something that you like. These flowers, I'm doing the violet, or like a rosy pinky violet sort of color, but really you can do anything that you want, any color that you would like. These bicolors come in beautiful pinks and shades of purple, but being in paper you can really use any color combination that you want. And even the little detail of a little single sort of leaf stem at the top here of the stem, all these little details really just draw your eye in. These leaves are very distinctive, so straight away everyone's going to identify that this is a cosmos. The sepals too, it really is very beautiful and looks very natural. I've studied some photos online from as many different angles as I could get, so I'm really pleased. And obviously adding the leaves just really elevates the stem. You can add 1 or 2 of these stems. You're going to see how simple they are to make, so you can do a whole series of them down one stem if you want to, for a really dramatic look. But we're going to keep the process really simple, and obviously with lots of room to experiment and to explore other ways of doing it. But I look forward to showing you how to make this really beautiful and eye-catching flower. The techniques as well, like for the center, is going to be really wonderful in terms of making other field flowers. So if you look inside the center, it looks really detailed. It draws your eye in as well, just seeing that little pop of yellow. And again, you can go a lot more detailed than I have, but I just think that it just gives a really beautiful look. So we're going to experiment with a few different ideas in the class, so the result will be a little bit different and probably more refined than this one. But I look forward to sharing how to make this beautiful flower with you.